Denver Broncos is where we're going next. We put for their top priority speed at number 2 wide receiver, secondary needs of O-line and cornerback. Broncos, a lot of turnover this year. Drew Lock is at quarterback. Love the concept of speed at wide receiver. I love Henry Ruggs for every team, but of all the teams, is Henry Ruggs the best fit for Denver opposite Cortland Sutton?
Yeah, I mean, the speed thing is nice, but I think generally they just need another receiver, right? Cortland Sutton obviously emerged as one of the superstars of last season, made some spectacular plays despite less than ideal quarterback play for a lot of it, but they don't really have a secondary guy anymore. They traded away Emmanuel Sanders midway through the season. Deshaun Hamilton wasn't able to get anything done. So they are left with a hole. They need somebody, whether it's Henry Ruggs for his speed or whether it's somebody else for any other skill set they have going. I think they need to be in the wide receiver market. And again, it's a great draft to be needing one, whether you draft them in the first and you have any one of those superstars, or the depth in this class is phenomenal as well, whether you wait till later on and start attacking it in the second, third, mid rounds.
Denver's at a spot here because a lot of people are giving them the receiver at 15, and I've said this for a few different teams. If you walk away with a defensive tackle in round 1, I'm not thrilled in this draft. I don't think they have to force that now. That you bring in Jarrell Casey with a nice trade of a 7th rounder. That's a steal. I don't think they have to force a defensive tackle as much as people maybe thought that they did a few weeks ago. But they're sitting there at 15. And they must be hoping, okay, they're just doing the math right now. If you have all 4 offensive tackles go off the board, maybe you have 3 quarterbacks go off the board, that's 7. You have these 3 top receivers, or however you want to sort them out, between CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, and Henry Ruggs, that's 10. Who are the 5 other players or 4 other players that could go off the board to kind of free up one of those wide receivers? It's getting a little tight, but I think Denver, they could be a team. They've got 3 third-rounders. They could be a team that targets one of those receivers and moves up from 15 to 10 or to 8 or whatever it is without giving up a ton. I don't recommend the trade up in general. I could just see Denver doing that if they get a little impatient and they really want to get one of those top 3 receivers in the first round. I think that's a great way to go for them.
I don't hate the idea necessarily of going for defense tackle. It's more the Derek Brown pick is the one that would concern me for any team targeting defensive tackle or an interior player in the first round, because I just don't think that his style of play, as dominant as he is in college and as dominant as he might be at the next level, it's in a very specific area that I don't think is going to be valuable enough to be worth that top first round pick. So, his ceiling and the comp that people have talked about a lot is kind of Akeem Hicks, right? And as disruptive and dominant as Akeem Hicks is, I don't know if in today's NFL, that's the type of player you want to be building around. You want a guy that will disrupt in the passing game far more. So a Chris Jones style player over an Akeem Hicks style player, at which point I think you need to look at guys like Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina. I think he could be worth, a decent high first round pick, because he's a far more penetrating, pass rushing, disruptive kind of player. That I think is not a bad pick for a team like Denver. It's more the Derek Brown thing that would scare me away, particularly if he's still viewed as high a first round pick as he was kind of before the measurables and all that stuff started to work its way out.
We put cornerback as one of their other needs too. Now that you got Chris Harris moving on, so they bring in AJ Boye. They franchise Justin Simmons at safety. I knew that was going to happen all along. Knew that Justin Simmons was going to be the franchise guy in Denver.
They did tell you,
but we're talking about
that would help.
They're talking about Bryce Callahan out there, and Bryce Callahan's always played a little bit better in the slot. Isaac Yiadom. I mean, they don't have any other really dependable corners that have put together multiple good seasons. I wonder if corner is the spot too. Again, we talk about every team talking about wide receivers and corners, but it's a consistent trend. If you don't have 2, which Denver doesn't have 2 clear corners, that could be good value if all 3 of those top receivers are off the board in the first.
Yeah, I'm curious what they think of the young guys that they have on the roster because they could be a candidate to be a team a little bit like the 49ers, who, everyone was saying a year ago, they need corners, they got to start attacking that position. And all the way through, they were kind of like, no, look, we like the potential of the young guys on the roster. We're going to give them a chance to be better than they were a season ago. And ultimately they were proved kind of right, particularly with the resurgence that Richard Sherman had. I wonder if Denver are a candidate to be like, we actually like the guys on the roster. We're going to give them a chance to develop and not panic and go after corner that hard.
Possible. Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl champs, still looking at cornerback probably as their biggest question mark. Right now we're looking at Charvarius Ward, Keith Reeser, Rashad Fenton, guys that are just filling out the depth chart there. They won a Super Bowl without great corners, but it doesn't mean they can't improve.
Where do you stand on this? Is this a good thing or a bad thing that the Chiefs are the Super Bowl champions and have this degree of glaring hole on the roster?
Oh, that's a good thing for the future of the Chiefs. I mean, you look, we talked about it all the time. The offense dictates things. The defense, they just needed to get back toward an average group, and they strategically went from a man coverage team to more of a zone heavy team where you could, hide your corners a little bit more, and they got great play from their safeties. I thought their strategy last year was to have versatile safeties like Tyrann Mathieu and Juan Thornhill, who got hurt but was excellent as a rookie before the injury, was to have they tried to own the middle of the field, which is not a bad way of doing things either. Think about that just from an analytics standpoint or an NFL standpoint. We talked about the slot being a little bit more valuable than the outside corners. So if you have a versatile safety who is covering the slot and is essentially playing a robber role and taking away those high value routes, then you're even without great name talent, just schematically you're taking away important pieces for the opposing offense. So I thought they did a great job, but it all still comes down to Mahomes. Like, there are people trying to justify the Frank Clark deal where he's the highest paid guy on the team. The Frank Clark deal is still terrible. He still wasn't very good. It wasn't justified because they won a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes and the offense won a Super Bowl, and the defense is along for the ride.
So yes, agreed with the Frank Clark thing. I think Frank Clark, the transition or the swap essentially from D Ford to Frank Clark made that team worse. And I know that technically speaking, like D Ford has effectively cost them a Super Bowl, and Frank Clark was part of them winning one. But whatever, they were a worse team.
If you just sum it up by one play, because Frank Clark had a sack and D Ford had an offsides. Yes.
Yeah, but in terms of like net impact, D Ford is a better force for them than Frank Clark was overall. So getting back to the cornerback thing, here's the thing. I think there are a couple of teams that have started, I don't even know if it's conscious or not, but if they've just headed in that direction and it's working out, I think there are a couple of teams that have started to work out that cornerback is actually not this all important position that it used to be, that if you don't have them, you're screwed, right? Because you don't have to go back that far, and there's a couple of teams that still play this way, where man coverage was everything. And if you didn't have a corner that could man up, you were going to get toasted every single play, and your secondary was garbage, and there was nothing you could do about it because those guys were expected to track a receiver wherever he went. And if they couldn't, that guy was going to be wide the hell open on the back end. Now, though, the whole league has transitioned towards varieties of zone defense, whether it's the single high shells of the Seattle cover 3, cover 1 style systems, whether it's the cover 2, 4, 6 type systems where teams are using the split field safeties. The point is, everything is working in zones now. So you don't expect these corners necessarily to have to cover the entire field. And actually, if you get really good players in the safety spots and at linebacker, you can actually start to really shrink the amount of ground that you need cornerbacks to be able to cover and really cut down on the number of routes you expect them to deal with. And suddenly you get to this position where you can actually hide cornerback play really quite efficiently. And, look at the team like the Vikings, right? The Vikings had pretty bad cornerback play last season, but they had 2 of the top, 5 safeties in the NFL last season in Anthony Harris and Harrison Smith. They had arguably the best coverage linebacker in the NFL last season in Eric Kendricks. Suddenly you've got a guy who can run the seam, take away a ton of that stuff. You've got safeties that can break from the middle or from split field looks to anything that the corner gives up behind them. now the cornerback really doesn't have to cover that much ground before he gets beat. And as you said, the Chiefs are doing a similar thing where they're trying to own the middle of the field, forcing everything really wide to have those cornerbacks not have to cover that much ground. I think there is a blueprint in today's NFL to really hide crappy cornerback play in a way that didn't used to exist.
I just think it comes down to playing to your personnel, man. That's what it comes down to. They were, for a few years, I mean, people are joking about the Chiefs cornerbacks being terrible the last couple of years, but the previous years before that, they were given all of the top quarterbacks all sorts of issues, whether it was Tom Brady, whether it was Phillip Rivers, it didn't matter. You know, Peyton Manning, even toward the end of his career, before he even regressed, he would have some struggles against, really good man coverage that the Chiefs were trotting out there. They just ran out of good bodies that could play a man, and in 2018, they didn't change the scheme, and it was, Bob Sutton was doing some really good things there for a while, and they just ran out of steam. And then last year, Spags, my boy Spags, he comes in and plays to their personnel a little bit better. So, all that said, I'd still rather see them have more talented players at corner. It's still better for your team. And, once again, when we look at our draft board, there's a lot of players in that 25 to 50 range at corner in our rankings that could be extremely valuable players there at the end of the first round for the world champion Chiefs. They only have 5 draft picks, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. No 6s and 7s.
Who do you like the most from a schematic point of view in terms of cornerbacks that could be available at the back end of the first round for the Chiefs?
I like Bryce Hall a little bit, but for them, zone skills and everything, I don't think, maybe not back end of the first round for him with the injury concerns, but I think he's a guy that could get second or third. Back end of the first, do you have a good fit there? AJ Terrell maybe for
Terrell
Clemson
was the one that was leaping to mind for me. Yeah. I really like what AJ Terrell could do in that scheme. I think that would be a really natural fit. And as I say, I think that so as much as cornerback is a glaring need for them, I think it's a really cornerback friendly environment right now. I think a first round corner could come in there and be surprisingly effective year one, because I think that job is easier than it is a lot of other teams.
Javarius Ward too is actually a pretty good man coverage corner, and if they had another guy there, like, it opens up some flexibility for the defense. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. This isn't right here. It is Las Vegas because it's LA. They're next, man.
Mm-hmm.
Las Vegas Raiders. Big need for the Raiders.
Help up in everybody's alphabetization.
I know, right? Help in the secondary for the Raiders. Yes. I think they've made. What do you think of some of the moves that they've made so far this offseason? We're talking about a lot of players coming in. Kwiatkowski at linebacker, Corey Littleton at linebacker, Eli Apple, Jeff Heath, Malik Collins. That's 5 potential starters just on the defense alone.
Yeah, I like the moves they've made. I think they've actually quietly done a really good job of free agents. They haven't overpaid massively for anybody. They've brought in players, at least a couple of which should be pretty dramatic upgrades right from day one. And I think they've rolled the dice in a couple of spots that doesn't hurt. Malik Collins has some talent. I've never really loved what he's done in the NFL, but I think as a sort of reclamation, kick the tires project, I think that makes a lot of sense. Eli Apple's a similar case, right? He's got some talent, particularly in man coverage, hasn't necessarily lived up to where he was drafted, but this whole offseason was about reclamation project corners and rolling the dice on one of them and seeing what you can get. So I think quietly they've done a really good job in free agency and set themselves up quite well. And like a ton of these other teams, their biggest needs remaining are receiver and corner, the two areas we keep preaching on about. And honestly, as much as it's the sort of the way the NFL has gone, it's a good year for that to be the thing you're chasing heading into the draft.
Yeah, again, I've said double up at receiver for the Raiders would be a great way to go. I still think the depth chart's saying that's possible, but I also look at the secondary of Eli Apple and Trayvon Mullen as the starting corners, couple, 6 foot plus, long corners. Opens up their ability to play a little bit more man. They still like to play a lot of zone there under Gunther, but man, they could use, some more security there in the secondary for sure. Still don't know what you're going to get from Jonathan Abram back there. Jeff Heath is he's the guy that's going to get everybody lined up, the veteran guy that's going to make sure you're in the right play, but he's not spectacular. But they've taken steps in the right direction there. But I think, similar to the Bills, there's not glaring needs, but there's needs, right? So I think receiver would be a great way to go. Get those speed guys, maybe one of those, a Judy or a Lamb there at 12 would be
So that's the thing, right?
fantastic for the Raiders.
They're in a really good spot because they pick 12 and 19, so could
Yes.
potentially get a top end player, probably not the first, but a top end player at both cornerback and wide receiver. So let's give them the ideal guy, right? Who's the best receiver they can get and the best cornerback they can get? I would assume receiver at 12 and corner at 19, but you could convince me otherwise.
So we have Judy just above Lamb. I think for the Raiders, I think CD Lamb, because I think I want somebody that's going to extract some aggressiveness. And Lamb, I think his skill set's a little bit closer to Amari Cooper as an outside receiver. And when Carr was thrown to Cooper and the trust that he had throwing the fade and the back shoulder down the field and their connection, I could see Carr and Lamb having a great connection outside. And you have Hunter Renfrow already in the slot. So I think fit for the Raiders, CD Lamb would be fantastic. I think that would be good for Carr.
Do you think that of those two, I have this feeling that of the two, Jerry Jeudy is going to slip in this draft? I'm not talking like slip out of the first round or anything, but it feels like one of them could still be a top 10 player and the other one's going to slip into the teens somewhere. And I could see Jerry Jeudy being that guy where teams suddenly start to get twitchy about, well, most of his production was the slot and doesn't win the contested catches, which is the thing we have to chase, even though, Jeudy feels like a guy that might start to fall into the teens where a team like the Raiders could snag him.
I could absolutely see that. Plus Jeudy only ran in the 4.4s, right? And he looked like a 4.3 guy, and Ruggs looked like a 4.2 guy. It feels like there's a big difference here. And I could see a lot of teams chasing speed for Ruggs, and Ruggs gets elevated. Lamb looks like a better all-around option because of all the reasons I just described. I don't think that's crazy. I would take both of them, though. If you had the option,
oh, sure.
I'd take both.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think Judy's general athleticism numbers were underwhelming compared with what he looks like on tape. I think he's the guy that's more likely to slip, or more to the point of the two, Lamb is more likely to be gone where the Raiders pick. But I do agree with you. I think he would be the ideal one to be there at 12 if they could snag him. And then at 19, the cornerback I would really like to see with the Raiders is CJ Henderson from Florida.
CJ Henderson,
again,
yes.
Bigger, longer, or cornerback. I think he's got a lot of skills suited to that defensive scheme. I think he could come in, be a starter from day one, and help upgrade that secondary.
I like it. Here's the other thing about the Raiders, right? This is the tail end of the Khalil Mack trade right here. You got the one more first-round pick, and you're going to go back and look at, okay, what did they get over the last couple of years? It's Cleveland Farrell and Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Abram in last year's first round, and then these two first-rounders. And you're going to stitch that all together and say, okay, it was Khalil Mack essentially for these other, replaced him with these other three first-rounders, and how did that all stack up? So it's a big draft again for the Raiders this year.
What did you
Los Angeles Chargers?
What did you think the glorious Los Angeles Chargers logo overhaul?
Yeah. Everybody needs to stop overhauling everything.
I mean, theirs was so overhauled that it was hard to find what they did.
Yeah.
Like the Rams, at least was a significant overhaul, right? There's some discussion to be had there. The Chargers come out like 2 days later. It's like, oh,
they move a bolt somewhere?
Right. We added a slight bolt to here. Way. It's just, you're already like playing second fiddle to this team, living in their building. Like, come on. You can't come out like 2 days after everyone was hating on their logo reveal and be like, hey, we did it as well. Only nothing really changed.
Maybe they should spend more time studying their playbook, Sam. That's what I think, instead of changing logos. So I thought the Chargers, we've talked about this quite a bit already on the pod too. They've done some nice things this offseason, but still need a left tackle, continue that offensive line overhaul. Still need a quarterback besides Tyrod Taylor, and maybe a third wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line, I think, is the thing, regardless of who the quarterback is. They were completely unable to put one in front of Phillip Rivers for basically the guy's entire career. We've made some moves so far in free agency. Brian Bulaga should be a big upgrade at right tackle. They traded for Trey Turner, getting rid of Russell Okung in the process. It's hard to know what that would be. I think they did at least get younger in that trade. I'm not sure they got better. It's been a long time. Like 2015, I think, was Trey Turner's best season.
Yeah.
So it's been a while since we've seen him actually play particularly well, but the potential is there. And then, yeah, you need to solve your left tackle spot. So I think they're in a really interesting spot at 6, right? They're pick 6 overall.
Yeah.
They could get potentially the best tackle on the board. They could potentially grab Jeffrey Okudah. I talked about that before. I love that as a fit in that secondary. They could be, given how diverse and freaky and interchangeable their secondary is, they could be in the sweepstakes for Isaiah Williams, right?
Simmons. Yeah,
Isaiah Simmons, sorry. And then they could also be in the sweepstakes for quarterbacks, right? Whether it's, do we move up and try and get in the Tua sweepstakes, or do we move down and try and get the Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, or do we stand pat and reach for one of those guys? They're kind of one of the pivot points of the first round of this draft. They could go in so many different directions, all of which I think make a lot of sense.
Yeah, they're interesting because the rest of their roster is really good. I mean, it would, the Chargers tend to charger anyway, and they lose more games than they should, other than once every 5 years. But on paper, again, they look really good once again this season. So it would be tough for them to be in full tank mode, which makes me think. I think at 6 overall, it's either they're taking a shot at quarterback because they love Justin Herbert, or they're going tackle. The question, if they go tackle, though, is, okay, what do you do in a quarterback long term? Because you have Tyrod, are they gonna sit and wait, or pick up Cam Newton? Are they gonna late swoop in for Jameis Winston or something? I don't know. I mean, their long-term quarterback question mark still looms, despite having one of the best secondaries, one of the best groups of playmakers, an improved offensive line. All these things don't matter if they
How
don't
much
improve
is
with QB.
how much is their quarterback situation or outlook, or the sort of the way we're phrasing it right now, determined entirely by the fact that they're in a division with Patrick Mahomes? Like, if you took Patrick Mahomes out of the equation and just said, this is the Chargers roster heading into the 2020 season and Tyrod Taylor is the quarterback, how much better would their prospect be?
I don't think it matters a ton, to be honest. I think just the fact that we think that offense matters more than defense, and that we know that you have to kind of dictate. You have to be able to win shootouts in the NFL, because the average game is essentially an old school shootout. That's just the NFL. You have to be able to score points. And the Tyrod take care of the football style. So I think the Chargers could be looking at this and saying, we're going to be the opposite of the Chiefs. We're going to take care of the football. We're going to play defense, and we're just going to have 8 possessions per team a game. I think they could actually be doing that, but I don't think that's the right way to. It's chasing it's a risky style to chase. To your points
And
that you made
remember
earlier.
what that Tyrod Taylor offense started to look like in Buffalo when they actually built the run game around him a lot. They kind of preempted a lot of what the Ravens are doing, except obviously
Sure.
Tyrod Taylor isn't Lamar Jackson. So there's an offense to be had there that's quite successful and potentially does play against what the Chiefs want to do. We talked before about one of the ways to frustrate and irritate and limit those high octane passing offenses is to run the ball, keep them off the field, and just frustrate them. Because if you can get one stop, suddenly it's like, crap, we haven't been on the field for the last 25 minutes, and we actually need to connect on this next drive, right? And then if they don't do that twice, suddenly they're in a hole that they feel, and it starts to get them twitchy and stressed out. So there's a chance that the Chargers could be trying to build another Baltimore Ravens, only obviously instead of Lamar Jackson, it's Tyrod Taylor. But, Tyrod Taylor's not the worst quarterback in the world either.
Yeah, I get it. I understand. With all that talent there and the guys to throw to and everything, I think they need an upgrade. So I think it's going to be Herbert or tackle at 6 overall. For the Chargers, also have a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. They are the team that just has their usual allotment of picks in this draft, what they have. Yeah, but they've done some nice things defensively, but question marks abound on the offense.
Are they a team that would make sense to target the elusive 2nd round quarterback, right? You take tackle at the top of the 1st because aside from anything else, you just don't love the quarterback situation there. Instead of trying to trade back and hope the guy that you like, say a Justin Herbert, is still there at 18 or whatever, say, screw it, we're going to take the best tackle in the draft, take him at number 6. And then in our 2nd round, we're going to, target a guy like Eason.
Yeah, look, I don't mind. I would rather take a shot in the 2nd round than the 1st round, right? So you at least get the player, you at least get a starter at a position of need for the last 10 years. So you have that sorted out potentially. I don't mind taking a 2nd round shot at a quarterback, but they're a team that has that minimum amount of draft capital. I'd rather see them moving the other way and trading down. I'd take a 3rd round shot, but my 3rd round shots are like Jordan Love, who could go in the 1st. So they're in a tricky spot because they don't have the roster to be in the Trevor and Field sweepstakes, but they also they don't have the pick right now to be Tua or Burrow either. So truly, if they traded multiple picks to just go get Tua this year, though, I wouldn't hate that either. If they sacrificed this year's draft to get Tua and then said, okay, now next year it's trade down land, right? Because you could do 1 year of trading up, and this is where the Jets have made a mistake. We still have the Jets to do. This is where they've made a mistake. They did the 1 year trade up for Darnold, and they never got those picks back to replenish that roster. The Chargers could do that this year. 1 year trade up, trade down a million times in the future.
I mean, honestly, the difference is I honestly think you can do it for a quarterback as long as you get the quarterback, right? If Tua is the guy, trading up for him is not the worst thing in the world, particularly because, as we've just said, this roster is in good shape. The Jets' problem is that they went for the quarterback. They maybe got him or maybe didn't, but the point is they then needed to build a roster around him and didn't have the ammunition to do it anymore. The Chargers are already there. They just need the quarterback. So you can go after that guy with an aggressive trade. And even if it costs you, a ton of potential roster spots this year, you're fine, right? You're in a good shape. You just need to plug a couple of holes at that point. I think honestly, trading up for Tua might be the Chargers' best possible option. Like if they can swing that might be the best thing they could do for long-term contention.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.